Morning.
Good morning. So I guess we're
We have
both
a long
early.
meeting. Yeah.
Had a question. Had a question for you on the Ceph logs. Did that document make sense? Did you get to read that, or is it?
I just skimmed it, and I think my first question is just, I mean, there are a bunch of things in here. Generally, we do want to have this date time thread priority subsystem message, with one exception where there's at the very beginning we're adding a prefix that's log type, basically. That'll be debug logs, audit formon, audit log.
So meaning, so any of the things that we saw then that we were looking at follow that format? I don't remember having a log type preceding everything.
You have to pass in a couple extra arguments to the Ceph daemons, and depending on what version of Rook you were running, it may or may not have been passing that in yet. I can't remember if all the daemons have been updated and those requests have been merged yet, but it's like an extra set of flags. Basically, okay. There are per daemon debug logs, which is mostly what you're seeing here.
Okay.
That are going to be prefixed with debug, and then you also have the cluster logs where you have channels where it's defaults, audit, dashboard. I think I don't know, there are a couple different channels, and then we'll put that in there also.
Awesome.
But the idea that I haven't actually looked at this to verify, so we should do this. But the idea is that we'll have a standard format. They'll all sort of be uniform, and we can tweak. If they're not, then we can just tweak the syntax so that they look that way.
Awesome. Thank you. Looks like a meeting starting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. See you later. Okay. Morning, everyone.
Hello there.
Hey.
I caught the tail end of the conversation. It was important.
Yeah, we're looking at this logging thing. Chat. Basically cleaning up all the log outputs so they're consistent for when they get fed into Elasticsearch and Fluentd and whatever else. All right.
Should get a link to the Sebastian.
Yeah. Hello.
Cool. We got 4 people. We can go ahead and get started. Yeah, Sebastian, you got the agenda items first, so.
Yep, sure.
There you
go. Nautilus RC1 is out. Oh.
Hey.
Thanks everyone for contributing to it.
Yep. What is the next step for that, really? Or timelines for shipping, or just for all Sage?
So there are a couple more changes we have keyed up for the Messenger 2. I think generally speaking, everything else is feature complete, so we just need to get all the QA suites cleaned up. So we should probably aim for on our second RC, like maybe at the end of this week, and then hopefully a final release the week after that. That'd be the sort of aggressive timeline. There are a couple things we need to do before that. We need to finish the documentation around upgrades, write up some stuff about the Messenger 2 transition. We need to install it on the lab cluster so that we dog food it a bit. I'll do that this week with the current RC, current master branch even. Yeah, getting close.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna miss the end of February, but I think we'll hopefully only by a week or so.
I have a question. So looking this morning, there weren't ARM builds of the RC. Are those planned? Should there be ARM builds?
I think so. We should just ping Alfredo in the RC channel, and see if he left us out on purpose or just because we're out of time or whatever. I think we should plan to have them. The other sort of question around the builds was that we had a couple people asking about Debian builds. We dropped them for Mimic because of GCC, but Buster has the right GCC, so in theory we should be able to add them back in.
Okay.
So
While Alfredo is looking at the ARM builds, could you ask him also to look at the NFS Ganesha packages for Nautilus?
They aren't showing up.
Oh, what's wrong with those? They should be fixed now. There was a problem when they downrev the Librados version.
Oh, they don't appear on download.ceph.com.
Okay. Yeah, that's a different matter, I think. So are you not using Ceph container project to build containers?
Yeah, that's what it's using, but it can't build ARM because there are no ARM packages, and it fails to build x86 because there's not a Nautilus subdirectory of the NFS Ganesha packages.
okay.
Yeah, I'd probably talk to Alfredo about that then, I think, probably the man.
Yeah, maybe you and Jeff can make sure you chase that down with Alfredo, get that sorted out, so we can. Maybe the other goal for the RC2 is to make sure all the builds are all the right packages in all the right places. Yeah.
Right. And so the ARM build is a separate separate process from other, because it seems like we've had this issue in the past a few times. We forgot
a different
that.
set of machines, and they're really slow, and so they frequently get skipped just to get things done. So I think that's mostly it.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah, next item on the agenda is the Nautilus branch. We now have a Nautilus branch in the dev repository. Should we now start backporting to that Nautilus branch, or is the master branch still merged into the Nautilus branch?
Merging into master for now. When we make that actual branch fork or whatever, then I'll send an email to Ceph telling everyone.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. So as soon as it's really branched, then we have to make sure that we are making use of the tracker for everything that needs to be backported, which is hopefully everything for now. I've added an orchestrator category to the manager project in the tracker so that we can categorize properly into the orchestrator tag. Makes it a bit easier to find, although there's only one issue right now in the tracker for us. The next item is Ceph image is not published yet. Blaine is updating the script for Nautilus.
Yeah, that's really what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Covered there with ARM and that. We will be.
Travis.
Oh yeah, and then for Rook, yeah, Sebastian, a couple of things merged, but Sebastian, you want to about that?
Yeah, so message into was merged last week. Then on the fly is switching to Beast front end for Nautilus. Then doing memory auto tuning for OSDs and MDSs. Make sure that we don't run out of memory. Well, basically, for HCI environments, we will be capping memory and CPU usage. So we don't really want to end up into a situation where OSDs and MDSs go above their own caches. So the idea is to simply set those flags, so OSD memory target and MDS something cache size, cache memory limit, to I guess the same size as the memory limit applied to the container pod, if there is any. And yeah, so that's what I'm working on, and also I have like almost everything complete completed for the running as Ceph running as a Ceph user instead of running as root. I just haven't pushed anything yet for this because the memory auto tuning is more urgent, basically. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Cool. Yeah, and one note since we got the patch merged, so Nautilus is working now with Rook, with the one caveat that you have to change the base image of the Rook operator to be Nautilus. So as soon as we have the Nautilus image pushed up to Ceph, then I'll plan on making that change to make Nautilus the base image, and then everything should work out of the box for Nautilus.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, thanks, Tres. And we might need to update the CI too once we have that image to run Nautilus by default as well.
Right. Yeah, I have a PR that's already open that will run some of the CI against Nautilus, and so yeah, I'm just waiting to make the base image the operator base image to Nautilus, and then that PR passes.
That's good. Thanks.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me. On Friday, I did update that PR to try and use the daemon base latest master just to see if it would work, and it did hit a couple of issues, but I haven't looked into it yet. Looked like it was more than just random issues, so there may be something there that, well, I'll look into it today to see what's up with it. But testing locally, it worked fine with Nautilus at least. Go ahead, Blaine.
Oh, I was just gonna say I could add in a line that would end up just being temporary for this week to another pull request that would essentially use the master branches version of NFS for the Nautilus build for this week if we really want to get started with that in Rook instead of waiting for a few days or the end of the week or next week or however long it would take.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Great. Good. So next up is SH Orchestrator. Merged.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
it's merged.
Yay.
It's only the beginning.
First step.
If anyone wants to prioritize sort of new stuff in there, I mean, there's a lot of different things we can start adding, like NFS, Ganesha, etc.
Device LS and service LS.
Device LS is there. I haven't added service LS.
Because I think the other orchestrator already supports service LS, so that would be something that is then supported by every orchestrator.
Sure. Okay.
Oh. Yeah, Lance had some problem with a face-to-face meeting this year. He's going to send out a new doodle for that. So it's not going to be week 12, but afterwards. Yeah, he's going to send out another doodle, and I will just forward it.
Likely to happen in April or later then?
Yeah, yeah. Next item is that we had some discussion about the drive group specification. And one question is, do we want to support file store in the orchestrator at all? Sure, the external orchestrator might want to support file store, but do we want to have that in the orchestrator CLI? Or do we just go forward with BlueStore and just forget about file store?
I would kind of prefer to skip file store just because it complicates things. And you can always run BlueStore on top of a file. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, let's skip file store, except someone really wants to add it.
Yeah.
But I adopt it.
Yep.
Does that mean orchestrators should also think about dropping the support for file store as well?
I think that's kind of unrelated.
Is it?
And this is all like greenfield, the new API, and so we can sort of pick what we support or not.
Yeah.
Whether Ceph Ansible drops file store is like different question.
Yeah. And yeah, the external orchestrators all have existing deployments out there that might want to continue to support file store for existing clusters. Don't know.
Yeah, but then the question is not for existing clusters, it's for new clusters too. Because if you can't ask for a file store OSD from the orchestrator, then what's the point of having it in orchestrator itself? If you hide it from the first entry point, then why would you have it in the background? I guess
you could still use the orchestrator tools directly, like directly interact with Ansible, for example. I mean, I guess to your point, it's sure we should probably eventually phase the nut file store out there also.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So I sort of the thing is that we have this drive group spec object that we feed in to build an OSD, and it has a bunch of fields that are not really used. One of the fields that is used though is BlueStore or file store. I mean, it's like a selector basically in there, and then so I want to rip out a bunch of these other fields because they're not used and it's misleading, and we just add them in as we need them. And I'm also proposing maybe we should go ahead and just rip out the file store BlueStore boolean, because why if we're not going to support it in the orchestrators, then we don't really need that field.
I would be more inclined to make it like an enum or a type, but then only support BlueStore, because eventually there's going to be something that comes after BlueStore, right?
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, regarding ripping of the other fields of the drive group spec, I would go forward and try to implement that for the SSH orchestrator instead of ripping them out. It's mainly the stuff that Jan added just recently to the Ceph volume, like for example, zonal drives or while drives that are explicitly mentioned on the command line. And we did go into specifying that in drive groups so that everyone can implement them, and having them directly out of the start to match the ones that are supported by Ceph volume. And I would rather go forward and implement that instead of removing them.
Fair enough. So I'll drop that patch that drops those fields. So I'll get rid of that. Do we want to keep the other thing that I was doing is adding a data directories field. Is that list okay as is, or do we need something more elaborate there?
Look good.
And for, I guess, scenario-wise, we're adding it really for development or testing, where if we don't have a device, we can just use some.
Primarily.
Right?
I mean, the use case is sort of like, people running under Minikube. You want to be able to spin up an OSD, using the orchestrator command line, and it makes that handy. So.
Yeah, and it's not just Minikube that wants to do that. If we want to replace vStart, for example, then we also have to support that.
Yeah, very true.
I think it's a fair use case.
We just put BlueStore in it.
So I have it as a flat list of strings that just tells you paths. I'm kind of wondering if I need some sort of security in here, because could you tell it to spin up an OSD on top of, user bin or something? So So I don't know if we
hopefully
need
you won't have write access to it.
do we need to have something that vets this thing for one thing, and then also, well, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be write accessible, but by people without privileges. But you never know; someone can screw up and sort of safety features in here. But that's one thing. But also, do we need, do I need to add other fields? So we have this drive group spec, and then we have these drive selection things or something, or disk selection field that is another object. So we have lists of those objects inside the drive group spec object. Do we need another object for directory selection? I don't know. So we can go down the rabbit hole with these object fields, but for now I was just going to stick with a flat list.
Yeah. If we can make it easy then and simple, then why not?
Cool.
Yeah, and in Rook, in the CRDs, we've had the directory list for a long time, or since the start, really, and nobody's complained about us needing to check for if there's a bad path. So I'd say whatever path they put, we attempt to use, and if it's bad, then
good enough a rope to hang yourself. Okay.
Right.
Good.
How far do we go to prevent it? Yeah. So far, it's been fine, at least in the CRDs.
Okay. Sounds good. My last item on the list was I had some fun with sub-interpreters last week. Turns out Python 2 has some old things that's called restrict execution mode that interferes with sub-interpreters calling each other. That's nothing that we need to solve for Nautilus, but maybe something that we can discuss in the face-to-face meeting for Octopus. Okay, do we have other topics?
I'll think of them as soon as the meeting's over, but not for now from my side. It's like things are getting squared away, so it's great. NFS and H Orchestrator.
Super excited. I guess probably one of the big to-do items actually is just to start writing some documentation. I don't know what documentation we have right now, but
we have some CLI documentation and some Orchestrator module documentation in the doc manager folder.
So if I long-term broad strokes, my hope is that we can do a couple things. One, eventually have a sort of a trivial bootstrap script that will just start up a monitor and a manager on a local host and turn on the SSH orchestrator so that you can then day two provision the rest of your cluster. That'd be one thing. And then the other is that we have the documentation right now is like, there's a couple sections on install, different ways to install that are like super, one of them is using Ceph deploy and it's like super complicated. And the other one, there's like a link to Ceph Ansible, and there's another one about manual deployment that's like totally useless except for developers. And then everywhere else in the documentation, there are just random references to like Ceph deploy, like the upgrade steps, for example, or like, I don't know, whatever. So it'd be nice to eventually make a full pass across the docs and rewrite all of these in terms of using the orchestration API, CLI, for everything, so that the overall Ceph docs are sort of agnostic about this stuff. But that's a big project, of course. But hopefully that's where we can get to eventually.
Rook, I'm putting together a big long blog post right here that takes you building a small Ceph minimal cluster, or cluster minimal setup, all the way through that, all the way down to building and exposing ports. So Perfect. I'm pretty close to having that all written, and we can point people to that at least for the time being. We may want to turn it into something more formal later. But for now, it was a good start. And then I'm waiting on some pull requests to go in before I can really publish it. Some of it refers to stuff that's not merged yet. So
Okay. And that's going to go on the Ceph blog.
Next week or so. Sorry, what now?
That'll go on the Ceph blog.
I'm putting it on my personal one, but I could transfer it there. Sure, I could do that. No problem.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, generally, after the release, we want to do like a series of blogs on all the new stuff. And so this would be a great one to do. Yep. Awesome. Okay.
That's great. Anything else, anybody? All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll call it a day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.